Welcome back to Mode Bespoke. I'm Atenas, and for today's project we are working on a bikini top. So this is part one of our two-part tutorial. So we're going to work on the bikini top today, and then we'll work on the bikini bottom here in just a few short days. So let's get started. So here's a quick look at the project we're going to be making today. Now for this bikini top, you're going to need some materials. So you're going to need one of these, and this is the, I think you pronounce it Coboo. So this is the Coboo Yarn by Lion Brand. You can find it in a ton of different stores here in the US. You can find it in Walmart, you can find it at Joann's, Michael's, any place that sells yarn. This is a size 3, so it's a DK, and it is a cotton and bamboo mix. If you can't find this, this has about 232 yards or 212 meters in it. So you'll just need one, and you can make a fairly large bra size with this as well. So I've made a B cup, and I'm working on a D cup right now, and I've only needed one of these. You're also going to need a stitch marker. You're going to need a Tunisian hook, and this is going to be a 3.5 millimeter hook and a measuring tape. So let's get started. There's a PDF pattern for this project available on the website. You can find the link in the description box below. So to make this top so that it fits you, you're going to have to take a few measurements on yourself. So you're going to grab your measuring tape and place the top of it right on your nipple, and then you're going to measure all the way down to the bottom of your breast. I highly recommend you use a measuring tape because since it bends, it will bend with the shape of your breast. So measure from your nipple to just below your breast. That is the first measurement. The second one is going to be measurement around your chest. And this is going to be right below your breast. So measure all the way around. And here we are just double checking just our chest size. It will be around the same or pretty close to a bra size. So whether you're 32B, 34C, whatever it is, it's going to be that 32 or 34. But measure around. We're going to need that measurement just to make sure that our bikini top is going to close all the way around and that we're still going to have some space on the straps. All right, so let's get started with the triangle part. So for this, you're going to grab your measuring tape, and for here, remember that we measured from your nipple to just below your breast. So for the top I'm making today, I need a 5-inch measurement. So we're going to multiply that measurement by 2, so my initial chain is going to have to be 10 inches. So I'm going to use this lighter yarn just so that you can all see the beginning stitches. So let me grab some yarn here, and we're going to begin with a slip knot. And this is going to be we're going to work on our initial chain and then our foundation row for a Tunisian crochet. So for your slip knot, wrap the yarn around 2 fingers, and you're going to grab your hook, insert it into that loop, and you're going to pull this yarn back here through your loop. And then to tighten your knot, you just pull on the 2 threads right below that loop we made. And once you've tightened your slip knot, let's begin with a chain. So yarn over, and you're going to pull that top loop through this bottom loop to make a chain. Now, you do not need a specific number of chains. You just need to end in an even number. So crochet as many chains as you need to reach that measurement that we just multiplied by 2. So I have to make a chain that is 10 inches long. So I've completed a chain, and then I went through and measured it and made sure that it is those 10 inches that I need. And for me, the 10 inches was 37 stitches, and we do have to end in an even number. So I'm going to chain one more and make this a chain of 38 stitches. I highly recommend you write this number down because you will have to make a second triangle to complete your bikini. So write down the different chain numbers that you used and the different measurements. That way both sides of the bikini will match. All right. So we're going to skip the first stitch, and we're going to begin our cast on the second stitch of the row. So skip the first one, go right into that second stitch, and you're going to insert your hook into the stitch. We're going to yarn over and pull up a loop, and we've cast on 1. Now move on to the next stitch and do the same. So just insert your hook into the stitch. You're going to yarn over, pull your hook out, and leave that loop on your hook. So we're going to cast on a foundation row. So just insert your hook into every one of the stitches and pull up a loop, and I'll meet you when we get to the end of the chain. So once you've completed your cast on, so here are all of my stitches there on my hook now, we're going to have to complete a return pass. Now this is just a regular return pass, so we're going to yarn over and we're going to pull through 1 loop. And then we're going to yarn over and pull through 2. And we're going to do this for the rest of the row. So yarn over and pull through 2 loops. So there's 1 and 2. And then we repeat. Yarn over, pull through 1, 2, yarn over, and we're going to pull through 2. And continue this until you are left with just 1 loop on your hook. When you have completed your return pass, your foundation row will begin to look like this. So for this next part, we're going to do some basic math. So we're going to take our initial chain and we're going to subtract 1. So that's going to bring me back to 37. Then you're going to take that 37 and divide it by 2. So that's going to give me 18.5. Since we only have whole stitches, not half stitches, we're going to round to the nearest whole number or add 0.5. That's going to give us 19. So we're going to cast on 18 stitches, and for stitch number 19, we're going to put a stitch marker on there because that's going to be our center stitch. So like in all Tunisian crochet, we're going to skip our first vertical stitch since it's already on our hook, and we're going to cast on the second stitch from the hook. So cast on into this vertical stitch. So just insert your hook into the stitch. You're going to yarn over and cast on 1. So we've pulled up 1 loop. Now we're going to go into the next stitch and do the same thing. So insert your hook into the next vertical stitch. So make sure you're only getting the top part of the stitch. So you can call it the top loop, the top leg, whatever you want to call it. But just insert your hook into that top part of the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. And you're going to repeat this same process in all of the stitches until you get to stitch number 18. So here we go, stitch 18. So I have all of my 18 stitches on my hook. If you're going to count the loops on your hook, you are going to have 19 because remember that you already had 1 loop on your hook. So cast on 18 stitches or until you have 19 loops on your hook. And then for stitch number 19, we're going to cast this on and then you're going to need a stitch marker. So grab a stitch marker and you're going to put it on this bottom loop right here. So into the stitch that you cast on into. And that's going to tell us where that middle stitch is. So whether you're on stitch number 19 or stitch number 8, whatever that number was for you, make sure that you place a stitch marker on that center stitch. And then just cast on the rest of the stitches of the row in the same way. The last stitch is going to be this one on the side. So there's a chain up here at the top. You want to cast on into this last stitch, so the one on the side. And what I like to do is just insert my hook between both of those, or behind both of those threads, not between. So behind both of those threads, then I insert my hook and cast on a loop. Once you have cast on all of your stitches, there we go, we're going to work on a return pass. So you're going to yarn over and pull through 1 loop. And then for the rest of the row, we're going to yarn over and pull through 2. So yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and continue until you are left with just 1 loop on your hook. If I'm moving a little too fast for you in this tutorial, I do have a Tunisian 101 beginner course, so go check out that video. This is called the Tunisian Simple Stitch. Alright, so now moving on to the next row, and this is going to be the row you are going to repeat over and over again. So skip the first stitch, and you're going to begin to cast on that second stitch. So cast on until you reach the stitch marker. So stop at the stitch right before our stitch marker. So while I finish casting these on, a quick note on the yarn that I used. There are a lot of other yarns that you can use that are water yarns, but the Coboo is the one that was easily accessible for me in the US. So that yarn, I was able to make this bikini a water bikini, so I was able to go swimming in this, and it is also machine washable and dryable. So nothing happened to my swimsuit. I was able to throw it into the dryer with the rest of my laundry just fine. So just a quick note on that. All right, so now we are at our stitch marker, and I cast on the stitch right before it, but we're going to have to do our increases. So the increases are going to happen on the chain right before our vertical post, so right before our middle post. So we're going to insert our stitch right into that chain, and then we're going to cast on our vertical stitch. So by casting on into that chain stitch, we're going to add a stitch on the right side of our triangle. to actually give it the triangular shape. So we're going to create our first increase. So just insert your hook into that chain space. You can either go through both of those loops like I did just a minute ago, or you can go through one of the loops on that chain. But just insert your hook into that, yarn over, and pull up a loop. And then you're going to cast on into that vertical stitch, and this is just a regular Tunisian simple stitch. So just insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over, and then pull up a loop. And then we're going to create another increase on the other side. So right in that chain space, right after the stitch we just cast on. So the same applies. You can insert the stitch behind the 2 loops of the chain or just the one. So just insert your hook and cast on. Now the rest of the row, you're just going to cast on the same way that you have been. So just a regular cast on into all of the vertical stitches. But what we did here with these 3 stitches is we just created an increase. So here's our center stitch, and then we did an increase on the left and on the right. So I'm going to just cast on into that vertical stitch right next to the increase I just made. So that one right there. And just cast on one for every stitch of the row until you get to the end. And then complete a return pass. I'm going to begin the this next row, and then I'll show you how to do that increase just one more time, just so that we can review it. So just keep working on this row and work your return pass as well. And I'll see you when we get back to this stitch marker. All right, so I have cast on all of my rows here at the beginning of the row. And now I've got to my stitch marker again. So I was just going to review this increase with you one more time, because this is the row that we're going to repeat over and over again. So you need these increases. So here's my stitch marker, and then we have to increase on either side of this. If it is easier for you to move your stitch marker after every row, you can go ahead and do that. Otherwise, just follow the straight line of stitches all the way up. All right, so now we have a new stitch. So here's that new vertical stitch right next to our center stitch. So we're going to cast on into that stitch. And then here's that chain. So there's a little chain stitch right next to our center vertical stitch. So it is between the stitch we just cast on and the center one. You're going to insert your hook into that stitch, yarn over, and pull up a loop. And then here is that center stitch. We're going to cast on one for that stitch as well. And then we're going to work a stitch into that chain right after it. So here's our center stitch, there's the chain, and that's right in between those 2 vertical stitches. So insert your hook into that stitch, yarn over, and pull up a loop. And then you can continue to just cast on. Now, this type of increase is a little bit different than just the yarn over and then insert your hook, but we want this to be as closely knit as possible, since it is a top. And that way you can decide whether or not you would like a liner for the inside of your bikini. So work on these increases, continue working several repetitions of this row, so until your fabric has the same height as that initial measurement we took. So for me, it will be a 5-inch measurement. So let me put this down and I'll grab the sample I've already made. So here's my sample. I've completed, I believe it was a total of 26 rows, but now as you can see, my fabric is ending in a triangular shape. So those increases made it so that we have a nice pointy tip here at the top. You can very clearly see where our increases were. They're nice closed stitches as well, so you may not need a liner depending on the color of your yarn and your skin tone. And now let's take a measure here of our fabric. So here's a measuring tape. I needed a 5-inch measurement. So we're going to line this up here with our fabric and line it up here along one of these sides. So pick any side, it doesn't matter. And this is a Tunisian simple stitch, so it will curl. So just flatten out the curl and make sure that the height of your fabric is that same as that measurement. So as you can see, I've got 5 inches right here, and this is where I'm going to stop. So now we have to cast a bind off, and that is to close the stitches up at the top. So now let me grab my sample here. So this is the other triangle I've got. We're going to create this edge. So in order to do this, we have to create a bind off, and then we're going to complete this with a row of single crochets here at the top. Let me get a little bit closer, and there you can see the nice little clean border of the top of our triangle. So this is the part we're going to create next, and then at the end we're going to sew the bottom closed to create the bra shape. Alright, so here's my fabric. Once you've reached the length that you need for your bikini top, we're going to begin our bind off. And for this, you're going to insert your hook behind that top loop or that top leg of the stitch, just like if you were crocheting a Tunisian simple stitch. And then you're going to yarn over and you're going to pull up a loop. When you have 2 loops on your hook, we're going to slip stitch. So making a slip stitch bind off is going to create a nice little braid, so the one that you saw at the border. So to slip stitch, you're going to pull this top loop right through this bottom loop on your hook, like so. And we're going to repeat this in all of the stitches at the top of our triangle. So now let's go into this next one. We're going to do the same. We're just going to insert our hook through this top loop of the stitch. We're going to yarn over and pull up a loop. And then you're going to pull the top loop through the bottom loop. So this one through this one for a slip stitch. We'll do one more. Insert the hook into the stitch, yarn over, and then we slip stitch. So just continue working a slip stitch into all of the stitches of the row. So what we're working on here is called a bind off. So the bind off closes up the top of the stitches. So let me crochet a few more and then I'll show you what that does. So if this is one of the first times you're working with a Tunisian crochet project, you might not be familiar with the idea of a bind off. I believe they do this in knitting as well, but I'm not a knitter. So if it is, just let me know. Share that in the comments below. But let me crochet a few of them here. I think maybe one more should do it. There we go. And now you can see that the top of our stitches are all nice and closed. Now if you look at the remaining stitches that we haven't bound off yet, you can see that they're very open. So we're closing up all of these stitches so that we have a nice clean edge and we don't have too many gaps on our stitching. Now once we get to the top, you're just going to work a bind off into each of the vertical stitches. So I've just continued to cast on until I got to the top corner of the triangle. So here we'll go over this part together. Let me pull this stitch out real quick. There we go. So that's what it looks like. So instead of working an increase like we have been working before, we're just working a slip stitch into each of the vertical stitches. So just the vertical stitches, not any of the chains. So it's going to be the same as what we have just been working on. So just insert your hook into that vertical stitch, yarn over, and pull up a loop, and then you're going to slip stitch. So then you're going to do the same thing here in that centermost stitch. And then again here on this stitch right on the left side, or right side if you're left-handed. All right, so there we go. So we've closed up the top of the little triangle. Now all you do is create a slip stitch in each of the stitches of the row. So I'm going to continue working on this bind off until I get to the end of the row, and I will meet you there. Once you're at the end of the row, we have to work a last bind off stitch into that very last stitch of the row. So skip that one chain space, go to the last stitch of the row, insert your hook like you would at the end of any other row, and then you just slip stitch. And now I finish my crochet by working a chain 1, and that's going to create a nice little knot here at the bottom, and it's going to get us ready for this back row. So now we're going to crochet into these raised stitches at the top. So I don't know if you can see them here at the very, very top. So this bottom section of our work has this beautiful raised stitch, so it kind of looks like a reverse stitch in knit. We're going to start working up in there. So there's going to be a little edge right up here. You're going to skip this edge part. So, and it's a little bit difficult to see it on camera, but look at your work. It's going to be very, very noticeable when you have that work in front of you. So work into that first row of raised stitches. Right in here, we're going to insert our hook into that first stitch of the row. Like so. And then we're going to yarn over and pull up a loop. And we're going to single crochet. So we're going to yarn over and pull that through both of these loops. So yarn over and pull through 2. And that was a single crochet. And now we're going to repeat this in all of the stitches of the row. So look for the next raised stitch, and these are all going to be in a row, so they're all going to be lined up. So once you find that first one, the rest of them are really easy to follow. We're going to just insert our hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then we're going to yarn over and pull through 2. And then we repeat in the next stitch. So go into the stitch, and then we single crochet. So I will include a few photos in the written pattern, and hopefully that'll make this row of stitching a little bit easier to see. I know it's a little difficult to see on camera, I'm sorry. So just take a look at it when you have the work right in front of you. I promise you it is quite easy to notice where you're going to be stitching. But if you need a little help, I will try to post those photos up as well. Once you've worked several stitches, you're going to begin to see a nice clean little border, and you're going to work the same single crochet pattern up until you get to the tip of the triangle. So get to the center stitch, or if you can't find the center stitch, at least the one right before the center stitch. So for me, it's going to be on the left side. So just keep working a single crochet until you get there. And once you reach the top, so here we're at the peak, we're going to start working this top strap. So we're going to work it directly into the stitching that we've got now, so we don't have to sew it on there. So to do this, and this is going to be the same no matter what size bikini you're making. So whether it's a B or a C or whatever size, we're going to work a stitch right here into that middle one. So crochet a single crochet right into that middle stitch, so the topmost stitch. And then you're going to chain 81 stitches. So again, it doesn't matter what size top you're making, make a chain of 81 stitches. So I'm going to chain all of these, and I will meet you again as soon as I'm done with that. So once you have your chain, so it was 81 stitches, we are going to have to work a single crochet all the way down that chain. So to get started on here, we are going to skip that very first chain, and we're going to work into the second one. So insert your hook into that second stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then single crochet. So yarn over and pull through 2. And you're going to repeat this in for every stitch of the chain. So just single crochet all the way down the chain, and this is going to create a nice little strap that you can use to tie on the top. So it's going to look like this, but let me grab my other sample so you can see it a little bit better. So there you go. So that is what our top strap is going to look like. It's just a row of single crochets. Keep working a single crochet until you get back to the top of the triangle. And once you reach the top, I've got one stitch left here. We have to work the remaining side, the side border of our triangle. So let me just work this last single crochet. And you're going to want to work a single crochet in the bottom stitch. There we go. I have to turn it in the right direction. Okay. So in that same stitch where you crocheted that last single crochet right before your chain, make another single crochet in there. And we're going to continue working our single crochets just like we did on this first side of the border. So this side, just continue working a single crochet into each of these raised stitches. When you reach the end, don't forget to crochet a last single crochet just so all of the corners are nice and clean. So we'll do one last single crochet. We're going to work a chain 1, and it's going to make a nice little knot here at the bottom of our work. And then you're going to cut your yarn. Make sure to cut a nice long tail end. You can weave that in later. Pull out your hook, pull out your yarn, tighten that little knot here at the bottom, and there is our triangle. So now we have to sew this bottom part closed. So let me zoom out a bit. So we're going to sew this closed. Weave in your ends. It will make this part a little bit easier and cleaner to see. I'll meet you here again. So grab your yarn or tapestry needle. You're going to cut a medium length of yarn. Make sure that you knot one end of the yarn. And then we're ready to sew. So let me grab my work. We're going to insert the needle going from the back so that we can hide that knot towards the front of our triangle and just the centermost stitch. Let's turn this around so we can see where we're working. And I'm going to try to sew some of this on camera, so hopefully you guys can see what I'm doing. So we're going to start on one side of the stitching. So whether you start on the left side or the right side, it doesn't really matter. You're going to insert your stitch here along the bottom of these stitches right at the end. So here's those side stitches. Just go along the edge. So I'm going to insert my needle on one side, and then I'm going to push it out through the other side, grabbing one of the stitches, like you see here, and just pull that through. And then we're going to go to the other side and do the same. So I'm going to find that first stitch, and I'm going to insert my needle on one side. Then I'm going to poke it through the other side, like we see here, and then pull the needle out. And we're going to go back to the first side. So going back to side 1, we're going to insert our needle into the same stitch where the yarn came out. So from our previous stitch. So I'm just going to insert my needle on one side, pop it through the other side, and pull that through. And then we're going to work on side number 2. And we're just going to repeat. So this is just the way that I'm working this, or I'm sewing this bottom part. You can use any stitch you want. There's a particular seam that I like, so that's why I'm working this way. But again, use any stitch you like. Now, if you don't tighten your stitches too much, you'll be able to follow your yarn to where the stitch ended, and that's where you're going to insert your needle. So here, look, I'm following through. That's where my yarn came out on one side. Insert my needle there. Anyway, so that's a tip on how you can sew this closed. After a few stitches, you're going to want to pull on these. You're going to want to pull on your yarn to tighten them up. But I'm going to keep working on this. And now that I'm at the end, I'm going to show you here this last stitch. So make sure that your edges have lined up as you go. So be sure to check that every couple of stitches just to make sure that you don't need to adjust it. There we go. And once you reach the end, I'm just going to sew a few stitches here at the bottom because I really don't want this seam to pop open. So I think that would be a terrible wardrobe malfunction while at the pool or the beach. So make sure you're very careful here with this last stitch. Once you have stitched it through and you're comfortable with your stitching, weave in your end, and then you're going to make a second triangle. So let's see, here's my seam. So I've pulled everything nice and tight, and I think it's fairly invisible. Alright, but I'm going to go through, weave in all of my ends, make a second triangle, and once you have both of them, we're going to work on this bottom strap. So here are my 2 triangles. They are done. We are ready to connect them all and add that final strap. So we're going to need a stitch marker. So I'm just going to use that same stitch marker I was using earlier. Just grab any old stitch marker, and then you're going to join the 2 triangles together. This, and place your stitch marker at the bottom. You can also use a safety pin if you have that available. So there we go. That is all pinned up together. And now for the strap, let me grab my finished bikini here. So this strap, we're going to chain 100. So make a chain of 100 stitches, and then we're going to attach this triangle. So we're going to single crochet all the way across both sides, and then we're going to add that second strap. So for this, make a chain of 100 stitches, and once your chain is ready, we're going to attach our triangles. So let's line these up and make them ready to crochet. So turn these around, and I'm looking at the front part of my triangles. So let me get everything ready. Alright, so pick up the first one, and we're going to begin to single crochet along the bottom part. So find that first stitch of the row. So just find the one closest to the corner, and you're going to single crochet all the way across. So everything is all tangled here. That's the only bad thing about making a really long chain. Okay, so insert your hook into the cornermost stitch of your triangle, and then yarn over and pull through. Oh, that fell out though. So let's move our yarn. Okay. Attempt number 2. Here we go. We single crochet. Alright, and it's stuck. Let's go to the next one. Let me zoom in a little so you can see. We're just going to single crochet all along the bottom part of this triangle. So anywhere that you see a stitch, just insert your hook and single crochet. So here we go. Move on to the next one. Insert your hook and single crochet. And continue to work a single crochet all the way across this first triangle. I'll meet you when we get to the center or that stitch marker. Alright, so we're at the stitch marker. Now let me zoom in. And we're going to continue to single crochet across. So we're here at triangle number 1. So we single crochet, and then we single crochet in here. And now we're at triangle number 2. So try to find the cornermost stitch. So if you want to remove your stitch marker, you can do that. If not, just find the cornermost stitch and continue to stitch across. Make sure that you tighten this stitch as much as you possibly can so that you do not have a gap between your stitching. There go. And then just continue to single crochet all the way across this second triangle. Finish that triangle, you're going to want to crochet the remaining strap. So just continue your single crochet pattern, get all the way here to the end. Once you reach this end right over here, work your last single crochet and then chain 100 stitches so that you have a strap that looks just like this. So I'll let you do all of that, get to the end, chain 100, and then I will see you there. All right, so here we go. I've chained 100 on either side. I've done my first row of single crochets, and now it's time to measure. So pull out your measuring tape, and we're just going to double check that we have enough chain to wrap the top around our bodies. So remember, I had a measurement, I believe it was 34, although I don't know if I told you that, but I had a measurement of 34 that I have to work with. As you can see, 34 only makes it to one of the sides of the triangle, which means I still have the other whole half of a bikini to cover the person that I'm making this for, because this is not for me. So double check that measurement. You're going to want to have enough chain on these straps to cover your body. All right, so we have checked that. Now let's move on to that last bit of our bikini, and then we are almost done. So let me get all of this ready again. Now all we have left to do is just increase this strap. So all we have to adjust is the thickness, and this one is entirely up to you. So let me grab my bikini here and show you. So I worked 3 rows of single crochets, but you can make this as thick or as wide as you want. So whatever is most comfortable for you. So anywhere between, or at least I should say, anything at least 3 rows is going to be comfortable, and it's going to have a little bit of support. If you have a bigger cup size, so you're, a D or anything larger than that, you may want to work a few more rows, but that is entirely up to you. So once you have finished that last chain of 100, we're going to work a single crochet. So skip the first one, go into the second stitch, and begin your very first single crochet. And we're going to single crochet in the next stitch, and single crochet in the stitch after that, and so forth until you complete the chain. Once you get to that triangle, make sure that your chain and everything isn't all twisted up. You're going to continue to work a single crochet all the way across. So that's the only thing you've got left to do, is just work a series of single crochet. So once you get to the end, so here are the triangles, single crochet all the way across, and then single crochet all the way across that other chain. So both of your chains are going to have a row of single crochet. Now, to start the next row and all of your other rows, we're going to work this way. So let me zoom in here. So you've worked all of your single crochets. Now all we have to do is work the thickness. So from now on, at the beginning of the row, you are going to chain 1, turn your work around, and you're going to begin your single crochet in that very first stitch of the row. So just insert your hook into that first stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, and single crochet. So the beginning of every row, just to recap, is chain 1 and then single crochet in that very first stitch of the row, and in every other stitch after that. So I will leave you here to finish your bikini. Just work as many rows as you want to make that width for your strap. But that's it. There is your bathing suit. At least there is the top part of this bikini, because this is a 2-part video tutorial. I will be posting the second part, which is going to be the bottom part of our bikini, in the next few days. So subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and hit that notification button so that you can find out when I post that video. I'm also going to be posting a video for a liner that you can use with this bikini top, so that way any of you that want to use a light colored yarn, you will have a liner you can use. But check all of that out here on the channel. Those are all coming up here soon, along with a whole bunch of other summer projects that we're going to be doing. If you want to see any more of my work, you can also follow me on Instagram. And you can get your copy of this pattern and many other patterns on my website. So go check those out. All the links are in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next tutorial.